Ethan Cole had built an empire from nothing. At 38, he was one of the youngest and most powerful CEOs in the city. To the world, he was untouchable, ruthless in the boardroom, confident at galas, a man who had it all. But when he stepped out of his sleek black car and walked into his empty penthouse, all the power and wealth in the world couldn't drown out the silence that greeted him. His only true joy was his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. She was the reason he woke up every morning, the reason he kept going after his wife walked out on them 5 years ago. His ex-wife had chosen a life of luxury and freedom over motherhood, leaving Ethan to raise Lily alone. And he did his best, but running a multi-billion-dollar company and being a full-time dad wasn't easy. Tonight, however, was different. The biggest corporate event of the year was happening, a gala where Ethan had to appear with a date. For years, the media had branded him as the billionaire single dad who never dates. But this time, his board insisted he bring someone to soften his image, to show he wasn't just a machine obsessed with profits. Ethan didn't have the time, or the heart, for dating. So, he did something completely out of character. He called an exclusive agency that provided professional companions for high-profile clients. Not for anything scandalous, just for appearances. A woman who could smile, hold a conversation, and make it seem like he wasn't living his life alone. That's how Sophie entered his world. She was nothing like he expected. When the elevator doors opened and she stepped into his penthouse, Ethan's breath caught for a moment. She wore a simple black dress, nothing flashy, and carried herself with quiet confidence. Her eyes weren't calculating like the women he usually met in business, they were warm, like someone who had known pain but chose kindness anyway. "Mr. Cole," she asked softly, extending her hand. "Ethan," he corrected, shaking it. Her touch lingered just a second longer than necessary, but there was nothing forced about it. They went to the gala together. Cameras flashed as soon as they entered, Ethan with the mysterious woman on his arm. Sophie played the part perfectly, charming, graceful, making light conversation with investors and CEOs like she belonged there. But Ethan noticed something else: she never pretended to be someone she wasn't. While others bragged about yachts and villas, Sophie spoke about books she loved, places she wanted to see, dreams she still held onto. For the first time in years, Ethan laughed. Really laughed. When they got home, Lily was waiting. She always waited for her dad, no matter how late he came back. But tonight, when she saw Sophie, her little face lit up like Christmas morning. "Daddy, is she your friend?" Lily asked, eyes wide with innocent curiosity. Ethan hesitated. Yes. This is Sophie." Sophie knelt down so she was eye level with Lily. "Hi there. I love your pajamas," she said with a smile that melted every wall Ethan had built around his heart. From that moment, Lily wouldn't leave Sophie's side. She asked her to read a bedtime story, and Sophie didn't hesitate. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching as Sophie's gentle voice filled the room, his daughter snuggled against her like she'd known her forever. And when Sophie kissed Lily's forehead goodnight, something deep inside Ethan shifted, something he'd buried a long time ago. But Sophie was only supposed to stay for one night. The next morning, Ethan walked Sophie to the door, already preparing himself to go back to his empty reality. But just as Sophie reached for the handle, a small voice broke the silence. "Daddy." Lily stood there, clutching her stuffed bunny. "Can she stay forever?" The words hit Ethan like a tidal wave. He looked at Sophie, and for a split second, he saw the same question in her eyes, followed by a sadness that told him she didn't believe she deserved forever anywhere. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the look on Sophie's face, the way Lily had clung to her. Something about Sophie wasn't just coincidence. She wasn't like the people in his world, calculating, fake, shallow. She felt real. And for the first time in years, Ethan wondered if maybe he could feel real too. He called the agency the next day and asked for Sophie again, not for another party, but for dinner. At his home, with Lily. It became a routine. Dinners turned into weekend visits, and weekend visits turned into Sophie helping Lily with homework, baking cookies, and laughing in a kitchen that had never known laughter before. Slowly, Ethan learned Sophie's story. She wasn't doing this for glamour or money. She had dreams she had put on hold to care for her sick mother before she passed away. Life had been unkind to her, but she never let bitterness harden her heart. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the city lights, Ethan finally asked the question that had been burning in his chest. "Sophie, what if you didn't have to leave?" Her eyes widened. "Ethan, I'm not talking about the agency. I'm talking about us. About Lily. About, forever." Sophie's voice trembled. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking," Ethan said, his hand finding hers. "You've given my daughter something I couldn't, happiness. And you've given me something I didn't think I'd ever have again, hope." Tears welled in Sophie's eyes. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Ethan whispered. And so, the woman who walked into his life for one night stayed forever, not because of a contract, but because love has a way of finding us when we least expect it. On their wedding day, Lily stood between them, holding both their hands, beaming brighter than the sun. And when the priest said, "You may now kiss the bride," Lily giggled and shouted the words that had started it all. "Told you, Daddy. She was meant to stay forever." Checkmark. Would you like me to write this in 3 parts for a 55-minute video script format, with cliffhangers at the end of each part? Or keep it as one long continuous narration with emotional beats for voiceover? The next morning, Sophie was gone. Ethan told himself it was just business, she did her job and left. That was the deal. Yet, as he walked through the silent penthouse, the echo of her laughter lingered like a ghost he didn't want to let go of. Lily, however, had other plans. "Daddy," she asked at breakfast, swinging her little legs from the chair, "when is Sophie coming back?" Ethan froze. "Sweetheart, Sophie was just here for the party. But I like her," Lily pouted, her big brown eyes pleading. "She's nice. She smells like cookies." Ethan chuckled despite himself, but the ache in his chest was real. He had never seen Lily warm up to anyone like that. Most women who came near him only saw dollar signs, and Lily knew it. But Sophie had sat on the floor in her elegant black dress and read bedtime stories like it was the most natural thing in the world. That evening, Ethan stared at his phone for almost an hour before calling the agency. His voice was firm when the receptionist answered. "I'd like to request Sophie again." "For another event?" the woman asked. "No," Ethan said slowly. "For dinner. At my place. With my daughter." When Sophie arrived the next evening, she wore jeans and a soft blue sweater. No glamorous dress, no elaborate makeup. Just her. And Ethan couldn't take his eyes off her. Lily squealed with joy, hugging Sophie's legs. "You came back. I told your daddy I couldn't say no to dinner," Sophie said with a wink. They ate together, spaghetti, which Lily insisted on helping cook. Sophie tied an apron around her tiny waist, and Ethan found himself leaning against the counter, watching them. He hadn't seen his daughter smile like that in years. And he hadn't smiled like that in years either. After dinner, Lily grabbed Sophie's hand and dragged her to the living room for a tea party. Ethan sat nearby, pretending to read emails, but his eyes kept drifting to Sophie. The way she listened to Lily, the way she laughed without holding back, it was like she belonged there. As the night stretched on, Ethan walked Sophie to the door again. She hesitated this time, her hand lingering on the knob. "You don't have to keep booking me, Ethan," she said softly. "This isn't what I usually do." "I know," Ethan said, his voice low. "But Lily, she likes you. And, so do I." For a moment, the city lights reflected in her eyes, and Ethan thought, just for a second, that she might say something back. But instead, she smiled sadly and whispered, "Good night, Ethan." The door closed, leaving him with a hollow ache that scared him more than any hostile takeover ever could. Over the next few weeks, Sophie kept coming back. Dinners turned into weekends. She helped Lily with homework, baked cookies, and even taught Ethan how to make pancakes without burning them. Slowly, quietly, she was becoming part of their world. But one night changed everything. Ethan had just finished a late-night conference call when he walked into the living room. Sophie was on the floor with Lily, braiding her hair while humming softly. Lily's little voice broke the quiet. "Sophie, can you stay forever?" Sophie froze, her hands still tangled in Lily's curls. Her eyes flickered to Ethan, filled with something he couldn't read. Sadness, fear, longing. Before he could say a word, Sophie stood abruptly. "It's late," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I should go." She grabbed her coat and practically ran out the door, leaving Lily confused, and Ethan feeling like his world had tilted. He didn't know it yet, but Sophie was hiding something. Something that could change everything. To be continued. Checkmark. Do you want me to write part 3 now with a shocking twist about Sophie's past and a powerful emotional ending? Or make part 3 even longer for the final resolution with a wedding scene and happy ending? Ethan didn't sleep that night. Sophie's sudden exit kept replaying in his mind, the way her eyes filled with something unspoken when Lily asked that innocent question, "Can you stay forever?" The next morning, Lily's first words shattered his heart. "Daddy, did Sophie leave because of me?" Ethan knelt beside her, brushing away her tears. "No, sweetheart. Sophie didn't leave because of you." But deep down, he wondered, why did she leave? For 2 days, Sophie didn't answer his calls. No texts. No explanations. It was like she'd vanished. Finally, Ethan couldn't take it anymore. He called the agency. "Sophie isn't available," the woman on the line said. "What do you mean, not available?" Ethan demanded. "She resigned," the woman replied. "She said, it was personal." Ethan's heart dropped. He had to find her. That evening, he drove to the small cafe Sophie had once mentioned when they were talking about favorite places. And there she was, sitting alone by the window, staring into a cup of tea like the weight of the world was on her shoulders. When she looked up and saw him, her eyes widened. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Why did you leave?" She looked down, gripping her mug so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Because this was never supposed to happen," she whispered. "You were supposed to hire me for one night. I wasn't supposed to care." Ethan leaned closer. "And you think I don't care? Sophie, you've become part of our lives. Part of Lily's life. And mine." Tears welled in her eyes. "You don't understand, Ethan. I can't give Lily what she wants. I can't give you what you deserve." "Why?" His voice broke. "What are you so afraid of?" Her lips trembled as she finally spoke the truth. "Because I know what it's like to love and lose everything." Her voice shook with pain. "I was engaged once. He died in an accident 3 weeks before our wedding. After that, I promised myself I'd never get attached again. I thought if I worked for the agency, I could keep things simple. No love, no pain, no forever." Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to take away every scar, every broken piece of her heart. "Sophie, you deserve forever. You deserve love. And so do I." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "What about Lily? What if I fail her? She's already lost her mother. What if I hurt her too?" Ethan reached across the table and took her trembling hands in his. "You could never hurt her. You've given her more love in a few weeks than most people give in a lifetime. You've given me hope, Sophie. Don't walk away from that." For a long moment, Sophie just stared at him, her walls crumbling one by one. And then, through tears, she whispered the words he'd been waiting for. "I don't want to leave." 6 months later, the penthouse wasn't silent anymore. Laughter echoed through every corner as Lily ran around the living room in a white dress, giggling. "Hurry, Daddy. The wedding is starting." Ethan smiled, adjusting his tie. And then he turned, his breath catching as he saw Sophie walking toward him in a gown that made her look like everything he'd ever dreamed of. When they stood at the altar, Lily squeezed both their hands and grinned. "See, I told you, Daddy. She was meant to stay forever." Ethan kissed Sophie, and for the first time in years, his heart was whole. Because sometimes love doesn't come the way you expect. Sometimes, it walks into your life when you order a date for a night, and ends up staying for a lifetime. Checkmark. Do you want me to add an extra emotional twist before the wedding, like Sophie almost leaving again because of self-doubt or an unexpected challenge? Or keep this as the final happy ending for your 55-minute video script?